if you're any
don't show me. I hope Sean doesn't show me this Stellar Blade trailer because it's going to trigger me to no end. I kind of want to see. I mean, it's so long, but you know.
everyone. Imagine if you
I want to see the fucking I want to see the rise and fall of gamers, dude, really bad.
can, the culture war, the great clash of ideologies taking place on the battleground of all the media we read, watch, play, and listen to. Then narrow your focus, if you're able, to just one front of that conflict, the video games front. What I'm going to do today is attempt to relate to you a single incident that happened on that front not too long ago. It wasn't a very consequential incident, it didn't really come to much, and it was almost entirely contained on the regressive side of the culture war, and it wasn't even particularly popular there, to be honest, in terms of the number of people who cared about it. Nevertheless, I am going to tell you about it today. So our story begins with a tweet from the 1st of February of this year. The account @Grums on Twitter wrote, "It's AAA game dev, triggering time. New Stellar Blade trailer just dropped." So if you're
don't show me. I hope Sean doesn't show me this Stellar Blade trailer because it's going to trigger me to no end. It's going to kill me to see Korean titties. I will die. I will perish. As a woke man, I hate boobs. Okay? As a woke man, I hate it.
anything approaching a normal person, you probably have a few questions about this tweet.
It's so funny, by the way, that like gamers have decided, why are we not watching Themasius' playlist? First of all, Sheltered Rosebud, it's the weekend, so I urge you to shut the fuck up, okay? Secondly, I don't even think Themasius sent a playlist today, okay? God damn. Yeah, there you go. I didn't send one. It's like, can I just go a day without Sheltered Rosebud? Turning around and just like dictating what happens on the stream. There's 24,000 other people in here, but like, nope, we got to listen. Sorry that I'm not doing hardcore news coverage for you. Okay. Please stop backseating. Jesus Christ. And we've hit a level 3 hype train.
Who is Grums?
I do find it very funny that gamers have basically made being like an incredibly horny person that is annoying to be around a political movement. Like they have moralized and politicized being a horn dog, where they're like, no, dude, booba is good. It's a political movement, please. You don't fucking understand it. And it's like, you're such a gross little pervert, dog. What the fuck are you saying? And I say this as someone who also every now and then enjoys a nice booba. But how the fuck do you create a political movement around gooning, dude?
Grums, what is Stellar Blade? It's a video game, and why is a video game trailer being released being assumed here to be, quote, triggering to game developers, since, I mean, that's the sort of thing you'd imagine they'd be used to, right? So let's attempt to answer these
thank you for the 5 gifted. Mythic, thank you for the 5 gifted.
Grums is the Twitter account of game developer
Crispy
Mark
Bacon Fox,
Kern.
thank you for the 10
Mark
gifted.
Kern is best known for working at Blizzard Entertainment on the original release of popular MMO World of Warcraft in the early 2000s. Kern left Blizzard in 2005 and has since spent his time doing sod all. Well, that's not very fair. After leaving Blizzard, Kern co-founded Red 5 Studios, a company he became the CEO of in 2008. Red 5 Studios was creating a game called Firefall, the production of which was very turbulent.
Duck,
Kern
thank
came
you
under
for
fire for allegedly massively overspending on advertising for the game, most notably on a custom-ordered Fire.
That's the other part of this that I'm very frustrated by, is that like this dumb fuck has never actually produced positive results and has like unironically done the exact same kind of Kickstarter grift that they used to shit on like Anita Sarkeesian and Brianna Wu over. But gamers don't seem to track it in the same way because Grums is like a gross little fucking gremlin nerd. And he's fighting the good fight against, woke in video games.
Firefall-themed bus which cost millions of dollars and was rubbish. Employees within Red 5 described Kern's leadership style as erratic, impulsive, and very disruptive. He was accused of taking extended absences from work only to turn up and suddenly demand sweeping changes to the game. As such, he was generally seen as a hindrance to Firefall's development, and he was eventually removed as CEO.
How are these gamers so shameless in behaving this way publicly? Because they don't go out in public, okay? They don't. Oh my God, brother, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to talk about NATO right now. Just go, please, just go and watch, I don't know, HasanAbi, NATO, Turkey, reacts to bestie marks or something, and you'll develop a better understanding. You haven't stopped fucking demanding that I stop everything and talk about NATO. God damn.
By the company's board of directors. Kern then founded Mech Entertainment in 2014.
Are you going to address the allegations? You're going to be coward hiding behind ignorance?
Blockchain integrated.
What allegations? What is it the fact that Korean booba gamers are waiting for me and I haven't played the Korean dating sim? Is that what you're going to say? Is that the allegations? Malsuk is better than Gran. I don't disagree with you. I think Malsuk is still best girl, but has been hard. It's been hard for me to win her over.
It's a virtual reality MMO for the Oculus Rift. And that didn't happen, obviously. Kern's next game, I suppose, was Ember, written EM-8ER, which is touted as a spiritual successor to Firefall. See, Firefall, Ember, you get it. Ember is, as far as I can tell, looking at development videos on YouTube, a game where you play a robot and shoot at little white cubes. Ember was announced 8 years ago and was in its pre-alpha phase for ever. It is still in its pre-alpha phase, I mean. Kern has made a lot of big promises about all the features the game is definitely going to have in the future, but as the years roll by, even the people who pay to support this project are starting to sound a little frustrated with him.
So this part is directly for you, Grums. Get off Twitter. Stop with this anti-woke crusade and just focus on the game. If you want to prove everyone is wrong, then be quiet, hunker down, and make what you keep telling the world you're going to make.
The top YouTube comment on one of these videos says that Ember, quote, is already running the exact same course as Firefall did back then, and for the same reasons. Ages of radio silence, change of gameplay focus, countless redesigns, lack of leadership, mismanagement of project funds. Both projects suffer from the same major problem. Mark Kern. Now,
this is what is so endlessly frustrating about the hypocrisy lovers out there, you know? People love to seek out hypocrisy, or maybe even in certain instances, hypocrisy might not exist, right? Against your ideological opponents. But like, this guy is literally responsible for the exact same type of shit that gamers are supposed to fucking hate. And yet, because he is, on this horny crusade, and can so easily create controversy by just simply pointing to the dumbest shit possible over and over again by being like, every game now sucks because there's black women in it, okay? Or this game sucks because Sweet Baby Inc. worked on putting black women in the game. So many gamers just like refuse to reckon with his own obvious hypocrisy here, that he is a failure of a developer and has grifted a shit ton of funders into believing that he was going to make an incredible fucking video game that he never did.
YouTuber in the clip there mentioned an anti-woke crusade from Mark Kern, which we'll get to in a second, but related to that, how do you get people to pay for a pre-alpha game which barely exists? Because people subscribe to support this game. The Ember website advertises founder packs which go up to $1,500 and which offer various in-game perks. And by in-game perks, I of course mean if and when the game actually exists.
The exceeding majority of gamers don't know who Grums is, let's be real. I know, they don't, but they know Asmongold. And Asmongold always fucking hypes up Grums. That's the problem. Like, a lot of this shit, a lot of people get their markers from this dipshit, and they basically will look to him as their North Star, as their guider, okay, throughout the stupid ass fucking reactionary slant that so many goddamn oily gamers have fucking gone through. It's so fucking frustrating. Some of it is because 35-year-old men realize that gaming doesn't hit as hard as it once did when you were a baby and you didn't have bills to pay. Okay? Others are understandable frustrations at the state of gaming now as a direct consequence of major companies, developers and publishers, basically turning everything into EA. Okay? Recreating the same cycle of FIFA over and over again, but for every other fucking game. There's also live service and microtransactions added on to the fucking bill, and DLCs. Ultimately, it's capitalism. Okay? It destroys art. It is not because of wokeness. And I don't know how to get this across to gamers in general who are like, nah, it's not that. It's actually wokeness. Okay? Yes, capitalism is a tendency to commodify and then ruin art. Huh.
To the point where something could be described as being in it, these perks could be in it. What does it mean, for instance, to buy a character skin in Ember? Well, right now it means you get access to a picture of concept art of a skin for a character which as of yet does not actually exist. And the purchase agreement on the site makes it very clear you cannot ask for a refund on any digital purchase so long as the game is in development. Now, I don't want to make any legally actionable claims here, but I have seen a few people suggest that this whole thing is a bit shady. At a glance, it resembles all the worst of fear of missing out, limited time offer, predatory game monetization, only without the actual game part backing it up. So why, you might ask, would somebody pay money to support this project? Well, if we look through some of these skins, there's certainly a theme, isn't there? A scantily clad lady theme. So keeping those scantily clad ladies in mind, let's talk about the anti-woke crusade. You see, Mark Kern is, to the apparent annoyance of the Ember fanbase, a very active Twitter user, having more than 200,000 followers, and he mainly complains about wokeness, DEI, SJWs, political correctness, or whatever they're calling it this week. For Kern and the anti-woke crowd, there's a battle going on for the soul of video games, you see. Everywhere they look, they see insidious attempts to insert racial and sexual minorities into video games. Not out of some altruistic desire to see wider representation in media, or even a profit-driven desire to market the game to more demographics, but a deliberately malicious attempt to ruin video games. They here can be a very wide variety of people, but it's mainly Western AAA game developers, many indie game developers, most video game publishers, video game distribution services, video game journalists, various video game journalism outlets, consultancy firms who work in the video game industry, woke gamers, and so on. All of those groups, they are part of the woke mind virus, and they're ruining video games by conspiring to put black characters in games and trans characters in games and make all the beautiful ladies into ugly ladies. And why are they doing this, you might wonder? Well, without going on too long of a tangent, if you dig into it, you'll find the same old right-wing narrative about so-called cultural Marxists attempting to undermine society by eroding and destroying traditional standards of beauty. The only difference is when we talk about traditional standards of beauty today, we're not talking about classical art or architecture, we're talking about dead or alive beach volleyball. And it's interesting, isn't it, how once upon a time regressives saw video games as one example of the ugly modern degeneracy that was undermining culture, whereas for regressive gamers today, video games play the role of the culture they want to preserve against the ugly modern degeneracy. It's the exact same cultural Marxist script being run, but video games have swapped sides. Regardless, they being the people who make, publish, market, review, and play video games, are coming to destroy video games, and so video games must be defended. Now, in practice, this usually translates to throwing a tantrum anytime a video game with a character creator has pronoun on.
One of my all-time takes was, how did we on Twitter across the board go from making fun of this guy to everyone actively becoming this guy? Like, and it happened. It was always there. Obviously, the Gamergate crowd never really went away, but it got so much more motion in like the past year, where like even the very same people that used to make fun of this fucking guy became that guy. And it happened basically overnight. There are some who actually think this guy's awesome. No, I know. But at the time, you gave him attention. Yeah, I made him. You're right. I made him into a person that everybody was making fun of. Yeah. Someone with a much larger platform that churns out this guy's fucking screeds on a daily basis would be Asmongold. Someone who has very similar opinions to this fucking guy. He's not even remotely responsible for this. It's me. I made fun of him with like everybody else. I apologize for making fun of the Eggman.
Options, but it also means supporting video games that come across to them as being anti-woke. And Stellar Blade from Korean developer Shift Up was flagged as a potential anti-woke game soon after it was announced, featuring as it does a protagonist who is a sexualized, conventionally attractive lady who wears a variety of skimpy outfits. Hence, it's AAA game dev triggering time, says Mark Kern. The Stellar Blade trailer is supposed to be upsetting to game developers who supposedly hate conventionally attractive ladies in skimpy outfits. That's what's going on here. The next month, when a demo for Stellar Blade was released, Kern posted on Twitter, "Now that Stellar Blade demo is out, so be on the lookout and DM me or at me any tasty dev or press meltdown please. I'm sure there is some massive triggering going on. Fellow devs," yeah right, "if you have inside stories to tell on the internal reactions to Stellar Blade, my DMs are open." So there is a massive triggered meltdown reaction to the Stellar Blade demo going on. Kern is sure of it. It's just that for the moment it's going on somewhere where we can't see it. It's an internal outrage, apparently. It's a quiet one, and so he has to ask for examples of it. And let's read a few responses to some of Kern's tweets here. "Oh no, beautiful women that for some reason get gay men and ugly women mad. More of this, please. The industry needs to heal. Ah, why do normal people find attractive people attractive? Gaming devs and press. Ah, me. Jiggle physics. He. Pearl clutching intensifies," along with...
Like, they invented a backlash that didn't even fucking exist. Okay? There are a million different games that have booba in it. Okay? A million of them. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. It literally does not matter. But they basically invented a reaction against it because it's not good enough on its own. Okay? It's not good enough on its own. You can't just hit it raw. You can't just like enjoy the game on its own. There has to also be a political movement associated with enjoying the game. And that political movement can only be defined by its enemies. Okay? And if there are no enemies against this video game coming out, then we must invent them. And that's precisely what happened with Stellar Blade. Like, it's just so fucking stupid.
A gif of a woman shouting, "I hate you." And there were a lot more responses in this vein. Rather smug gamers posting reaction gifs and writing little skits about how upset the woke game developer...
Just saw your story on IG. I didn't know you had abs. What the fuck? You know what? I forgot to showcase what I did this morning and in my workout. So, you know what? I'm going to fucking do it right now. Look at that.
80.
Why are pics so small? Shut up. Doors open. Also this. Yo, I was looking like one of those calisthenic guys. Holy shit, your scapula are fucked? Yes. It is. You held that for a split second? No, I can do an L-sit for like 15 seconds. No, scapula are not the cum gutter things, no.
What's up?
Also, this is the fit pick for today. Anyway, let's get back to the gamers now after I showed you that brief moment. Don't read chat. They're going to be annoying. Do you feel like your lifting changed since Dr. Mike? I focus on eccentrics a lot more and making sure that it's definitely a slower eccentric when I'm working out.
...developer/journalist Mobar about Stellar Blade. You see, the gamer lads here see Stellar Blade's character designs as a political statement, one running counter to their characterization of how the so-called woke mob is trying to ruin games with diversity and ugliness and so on. So Stellar Blade to them represents a pushback against a perceived Puritan attempt to remove all the attractive, sexy characters from video games. Except, I am old enough to remember all the way back to 1 year ago, when Baldur's Gate 3 came out. Baldur's Gate 3, developed by Larian Studios, is the third installment of the Baldur's Gate series, and has been a massive commercial and critical success. It's sold more than 10 million copies, it's one of the highest rated games of all time on Metacritic, it won the Game of the Year award at the Golden Joystick Awards, the Game Awards, the British Academy Game Awards, and the Game Developers' Choice Awards. It was also named as Game of the Year by various gaming journalism outlets, such as GameSpot, Games Radar, PC Gamer, Screen Rant, and many others.
That's the funniest thing, that they have no answer to Baldur's Gate 3 because it was literally a woke nightmare, okay, from their perspective. But it doesn't really matter because Baldur's Gate was successful. It was a real gamer's game, which is precisely the reason why this omega gay game, this super pro-trans game, didn't actually invoke the same level of outrage. Because these guys will look to bad games, okay, that are hastily put together by these corporations that just want to serve fucking slop, and will say, oh, these games suck because of woke. No, those games don't suck because of woke, dumbass. Those games suck because corporations are hyper-focusing on farming people as hard as they possibly can with nostalgia and all this other nonsense without actually offering any sort of like artistic integrity or artistic vision. Okay? That's it. When a game sucks, oh, it's because of woke. When a game is good, it's, oh, because they defeated woke. It's a very simple method. Ironically enough, there are a million different examples of video games that were seemingly woke on arrival, that these gamers, and not just like video games, but TV shows too, were seemingly woke on arrival, but actually got major box office success and real audiences that all of a sudden turned into anti-woke games. There are so many of these dipshits out there. There are so many fucking assholes out there who literally don't even delete their former videos. Okay? They don't even delete the old videos. They'll farm it, claiming that like something is going to be woke and it's going to be gay and it's going to suck. And then when people love it, they're like, oh, it's actually because it's not woke. And it's ironic because these are the people who say, why are you making everything political? They are the ones who make everything fucking political and unbearable.
Game developers and game journalists absolutely love Baldur's Gate 3. And Baldur's Gate 3 is horny as hell. To start with, I don't even know if I can show you the character creator from Baldur's Gate 3, but it's got options, let's say. Like, foreskin options. I myself have been playing through Baldur's Gate 3 recently and having a grand old time with it, playing a fancy little gnome bard, but I haven't really been pursuing the romantic or sexual options, and as such I didn't really have an idea of the extent of it. So instead I had to click through the IGN YouTube upload of the romance scenes in the game, which is more than 2 hours long, by the way, and I was red-faced and scandalized clicking through some of this. They do it. You see their bits. And there's everything. There's naked demon ladies and tentacled squid men. I think someone had it off with a bear at one point. They are going for it in Baldur's Gate, apparently. So we've got a seemingly extremely wide variety of romance options, and you can design your character to look however you like, be as attractive or unattractive as you want to be, and your party of conventionally attractive companions can be dressed, or undressed, or romanced by you, and all this raises a question, doesn't it? If so-called woke Western game developers and Puritan journalists supposedly hate sex and sexiness and attractiveness so much, why was this veritable orgy of a game so beloved by them? This would be the exact sort of thing that they're supposed to hate, right? But they think it's great, clearly, so what's going on here then? To attempt to answer this, let's first see if we can try to find any examples of any game developers or journalists actually being mad about Stellar Blade. As it turns out, Mark Kern's call for examples of Stellar Blade meltdowns netted one singular potential lead. A Twitter user replied to Kern on the 30th of March saying, take a look at IGN France. So let's take a look at IGN France. This page is a preview of Stellar Blade, talking about the pre-release demo of the game, which was posted on the 27th of March, in French, on the website IGN France. The writer of this article is on the whole very enthusiastic about nearly every aspect of Stellar Blade, praising the combat, the atmosphere, the soundtrack, and so on. The single exception is the main character, Eve's, character design, which he refers to as bland and likens to a doll sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman. Now, I think this second point here is not really fair for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'd say that it's a bit hasty to so definitively judge Eve's character design based off of playing a demo which only shows a very small part of the game.
Also, it's a real person, and I was shocked when I found out it was a real person. And then, I had to do some investigations, okay? I had to personally investigate as a video game journalist who cares about the truth. And yes, it is a real Korean model.
Game story, because it's possible that the full game would give some additional context to the character designs. It might not be all that likely, but it is possible, so I'd call this a bit of a rush to judgment, to be honest. The article compares Eve's design unfavourably to that of Bayonetta and 2B from Nier Automata, which are designs that I like and think work in the games that they're in, but you might not get the full context of why they work if you've only played a small demo segment of the game, right? So if I were writing this demo review, I'd probably have said something like, from what we can see in the demo, Eve seems bland, and hopefully the full game fleshes her out a bit more, something like that. Next, the doll sexualized by someone who's never seen a woman line could be read as a crack at the developers, and I don't really think it's all that fair to take a crack at the devs having not played the full game. I must say though, I don't think it actually is a serious crack at the devs, since the next paragraph of the review talks about the Korean model, Shin Jae-yoon, whose body scan served as the base for Eve's in-game model, so obviously the author knows the developers have seen a real woman. They're just describing Eve's design in a hyperbolic way. Still though, in isolation this comes across as a bit prematurely rude, and IGN France apparently agreed with this because they later deleted the sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman sentence and apologized to the developers of Stellar Blade. So, you might be thinking, is that it? Is this the extent of the massive triggering that Mark Kern was so sure was going on? A single sentence from the French preview of the demo of Stellar Blade, which was otherwise very positive about the game and recommended it. Surely that's not going to be enough, right? If we're going to kick off a culture war battle about this, we're going to need a little more ammunition, aren't we? It's going to be hard to claim that journalists are trying to destroy Stellar Blade or something ridiculous like that if you only have one example and it's from someone who likes Stellar Blade. And it's going to be even harder to claim that journalists are biased against conventionally attractive characters in video games, considering the author of this piece spoke favourably about both Bayonetta and 2B from Nier Automata. They just called Eve's design.
What's so insane about this is that it goes back to what I say all the time. Narrative is more important than the truth. Biased political actors with an ideological purpose have basically made millions of people online, millions of gamers online, believe in this false notion that devs actually fucking hate sexy women. It is so frustrating to draw a much larger point on this. It is so frustrating to see something so transparently incorrect. And yet it doesn't matter. No amount of evidence that you suggest to the contrary will shake people out of this fucking stupor. That's it.
Bland by comparison. So surely this can't be enough, can it? Oh no. What's happened here then? It seems we've got some discourse to take a look at. So, where did all this come from? Well, later on the 30th of March, Mark Kern posted a tweet showing the offending sentence from the IGN France article, alongside a picture of the same woman mentioned in the article, who was scanned to provide Eve's character model, as well as a picture of the CEO of ShiftUp's wife, who also works at the company. So this is a classic gotcha, isn't it? The article says Eve is like a doll sexualized by someone who has never seen a woman, but look, here are some women who worked on the game, which contradicts that assessment. Very good. It is undercut somewhat, though, by the fact the IGN France article does talk about that Korean model, in the very next paragraph in fact, saying, quote, Shin Jae-yoon, the poor Korean model serving as the character's model, is lost under layers of clumsy plastic modifications that make her unrecognizable both in body and face. So this tweet from Mark Kern doesn't really work all that well on that front, does it? Eve was based on a real woman doesn't work as a retort to someone who acknowledges her design was based on a real woman, but dislikes it in part for not resembling that woman. In fact, this tweet only works as a retort if you specifically do not include the context that the IGN France article talks about Shin Jae-yoon, which Mark Kern, of course, does not. Now, many of these videos are just people reading out this tweet from Mark Kern and having a big old laugh about how IGN France doesn't know Eve is based on a real woman, which of course they do, because they talk about her.
For people asking, is this what Gamergate was like? Yes. One statement from an article from a dude who is outwardly positive towards a game, taken out of context, is enough for this onslaught of right-wing fucking grifters trying to farm desperate goddamn losers into clicking in their videos and getting angry about a thing that is not real. Gamergate was significantly worse than this because there was a whole litany of death threats associated with it too. But it's in the same vein, basically.
But these YouTubers don't know that because they didn't go and read the article. All they've seen of it is this one sentence from Mark Kern's tweet.
This tweet by Grum seems to be going viral currently. It's at over 50,000 likes and almost 2 million views after a day. And that because it embarrasses IGN in two of the arguments they made. It says, so IGN calls the Stellar Blade protagonist a sexualized doll and says the creator's never seen a living woman. And after that, showcasing the not real doll, as IGN called her, and then the creator's wife, who's also simultaneously an artist on the team. So apparently IGN was too lazy to do even the most basic research on the game before publishing such disrespectful statements.
And yes, so IGN calls Stellar Blade protagonist a sexualized doll and says the creator has never seen a living woman. So, as you see, IGN spreading lies, as of course the mainstream always does. And this is only going to get worse because of the left-wing lunatics that are out there.
Because once again, there is no research or nothing being shown. This is why people are calling this out right now. Because it's quite literally a model. This is quite literally a real-life person this is based on.
And I always find this to be kind of a stupid take because this is the model the game is based on, being motion captured here. It is very much based on real women.
I don't know what I'm angry at. I don't know what makes me more angry. The fact that this kind of shit is kickstarted by like one dumbass, or the fact that so many people are susceptible to this kind of framing and get duped by a singular tweet. I don't know. I just like it. It's so frustrating to see this.
Now, Kern's tweet was one way into this discourse. Some other YouTubers were instead reading out this article from boundingintocomics.com, which makes the same mistake as Kern, saying, further, while Eve herself may be a fictional character, her appearance is not, instead being based on a full one-to-one body scan of real-world South Korean model Shin Jae-yoon. In light of both their ignoring of these facts and their blatant attempt to insult Kim, that's the CEO of Shift Up there, both Asola and IGN France soon found themselves facing a massive wave of backlash from the general public regarding their lack of journalistic integrity. Which, one, is very funny talking about journalistic integrity while accusing IGN France of ignoring something that they did in fact talk about, and two, is very funny claiming there was a massive wave of backlash from the general public about this. Yes, they were
This is why I gave up a long time ago trying to address some of the commonly held criticisms around someone like myself. I was wrong. Two mistakes I made in my career was one, openly admitting to being anti-capitalist, and two, ever thinking that people actually gave a singular shit about the truth. Because for people, it's not about a genuine interest or intellectual curiosity or genuine interest in understanding what the reality is. It's simply people that want to have their suspicions confirmed. That's why in so many instances, fucking instances, you see people that are in this chat, okay, that will just straightforwardly refuse to listen to what I have to say. I'll literally be criticizing someone on screen, and in that very same moment, they'll be like, I bet you'll love this, Hasan. Yeah, I can tell you love this. I mean, we saw this during election night when so many people came in and were like, oh, I bet you're crying right now. And I was like, I'm not. I knew that this was going to happen. I said that this was going to happen. And I was already upset no matter who won. And yet people were just like, nah, you're seething. You're seething. Another example of this is like the famous case of when I was in Australia, having the time of my fucking life, hanging out with my friends, not being online. And because I responded to someone in my Discord as, I'm going to kill myself, all right, which is, classic response online. The very same people that say that on a daily basis were like, oh, he's literally going to commit suicide. He's like actually exhibiting suicidal ideation. And when I corrected the people where I was like, I had no fucking clue this was happening online. I wasn't even online. People were like, nah, you're just lying. Nah, you're just lying, dog. Remember when you almost killed yourself because your view counts were down? It's like, no, I don't, because that's not a real thing. But it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Because the truth does not matter. What matters to a lot of people is how many YouTube essays we can make debating whether or not your favorite content creator has good vibes or not. The actual interpersonal relationship in that moment from fucking 5-10 years ago is completely inconsequential. What is more important is the narrative that you can lead on Reddit. And people would openly rather just continue along with a falsehood than to actually understand what the truth is. And when faced with the direct evidence that their narrative is incorrect, they just double down on it. Anyway. When I watched you debate that drama tuber looking for a video, I knew you were right, but disappointed you engaged with this guy who's clearly farming for a YouTube video. The guy had to take a break to watch his own YouTube video mid-debate for talking points, but I was still mad at you for engaging with the drama YouTuber. Yeah. Also, when that girl came up to you about Pepsi or whatever, people thought you were so triggered, but you weren't. Clip Chimp's trying to make something more than it is. Yeah. People absolutely would rather... People would absolutely rather have their own preconceived biases reinforced than to develop a better understanding of what the fuck's going on. That's it.
Marching in the streets of Paris, weren't they, about this article? Do you hear the people sing? We demand IGN France acknowledge that Eve from Stellar Blade on the PS5 was based on Korean model Shin Jae-eun. Even though they did. Now, the third way that YouTubers got into this discourse was by copying each other's videos. Like, look, he's just nicked his thumbnail and all. Some of these videos were commentary videos, you see, and by commentary videos I of course mean they watched a video that someone else made and paused it occasionally and said, yeah.
Yeah. And I always find this to be kind of a stupid take because this is the model the game is based on, being motion captured here. It is very much based on real women.
That's big-time internet streamer Asmongold putting his personal touch on this discourse by sitting in the corner there and watching this other video on the channel Yellow Flash Productions, which covers both the tweet from Mark Kern and the article on boundingintocomics.com. The video of Asmongold's stream posted on the channel Asmongold TV got
8 layers of falsehood with something of no material importance whatsoever, by the way. Because The other side of the story is the patently unserious nature of this conversation. What if IGN actually was mad at the titties? Who fucking cares? You know what I mean? Who cares? Even if it was 100% correct, even if Grums was absolutely correct that like they were seething, who gives a shit? Just play the fucking game, dumbass. Why can't you just enjoy the game on its own? Why do you have to imagine some woke libtards being owned somewhere, okay? In fucking France, of all places, too. You know, a nation state known for its unique approach to feminism in general. I think that a lot of these gamers would recognize that they are a lot closer to the average French person in their understanding of sexualized, fantasies than they think that they have disagreements on, okay?
Got nearly 1 million views, more than 10 times the views of the video he was watching, but don't feel bad about that. Asmongold is just watching someone read out something someone else said about something they didn't do any research about. It is lazy bastards all the way down today. Lazy and liars as well. Let's take a look at a couple of these thumbnails. This one from the channel Manix has a fake quote from an IGN Twitter account that says, in all caps, "Don't buy this game." This one also shows up in the thumbnails for videos on other channels, like these ones. There's also fake review scores in there, pretending IGN gave the game a score of 3 out of 10, which, I mean, it wasn't even out yet, and they hadn't reviewed it. They gave it a 7 when they did review it. The channel Dread Roberts has a video with a thumbnail that proclaims, "They want this game to die," in all caps, along with the quote, "She's a whore."
Like, this is so unserious, dude. Imagine. Is this the peak of your political movement? Like, even if this was real, even if IGN wanted this game to die, really? That's what you want to associate with? On your deathbed, that's what you're going to remember? The conquest you engage in? The fact that it's not real and it's simply just like right-wing hysteria that people associate it with and people just like ran along with makes it even worse. But also, even if this was a real thing, even if IGN actually had come out and was like, "I fucking hate this game, I hope it dies," treating this like your own personal 9/11 is just like, how bored are you?
Or under the IGN logo, which, well, IGN didn't say that, of course. Even the IGN France article that criticised Eve's design was broadly positive about the other aspects of the game. I mean, it doesn't make sense, does it? If IGN wanted to hurt the sales of Stellar Blade, why would they attack it in only a single paragraph of an otherwise favourable preview that only went up on their French website? Like, if there's some plot from IGN to destroy Stellar Blade, it's being expressed in the most obscure, contradictory way possible. So why are these videos pretending that IGN did trash the game and try to kill it? Well, for clicks, obviously. They want a big culture war Gamergate moment so badly that they're willing to play pretend to try to get one started. And this is one of the interesting things to me today. It's the yearning for a lost glory, I suppose. Watching through some of these videos reminded me of those Imperial Japanese soldiers living in the jungle who didn't realize World War II was over. These are the bedraggled remnants of the Gamergate army, bravely fighting on long past the point where anyone else cares at all. I think we need to get in touch with Davis Arini or someone so we can formally give them the order to stand down. One thing that stood out to me watching these videos was that the video makers would often make very confident predictions about both 1, Stellar Blade being a great game deserving of very high scores, and 2, the gaming press giving it low scores when it does come out. Watching one of these videos, I heard a guy say he was sure Stellar Blade would get low review scores, quote, "nothing close to the higher scores it deserves." Deserves. And this was posted in a video before Stellar Blade was released. Like, they're already sure it's a great game. It's already deserving of high scores before they've even played it, simply by virtue of what it represents. Now, it would be unfair of me to dole out criticisms of people speaking prematurely about a game they haven't played if I myself then went on to talk about said game having not played it. So I played the entirety of Stellar Blade. I streamed it on my Twitch channel, which I'll link in the description. So out of a sense of due diligence and to prove I actually did play the game, I'm going to review Stellar Blade now for too long. We'll get to the character designs later on, but for now I'll say that whatever criticisms can be made about Eve's character design, there are other characters in Stellar Blade who deserve those same criticisms, but to a much greater degree. If Eve's design is a little uncanny valley, then at the bottom of the uncanny valley is opened up an uncanny sinkhole, which contains neotenous monsters like Kaya and Lily, who make Eve look positively pedestrian by comparison. I'll give a spoiler warning here for Stellar Blade, of course, and I also have to give a spoiler warning here for the 2017 game Nier Automata, for reasons that will become very apparent very quickly. So okay, Stellar Blade. If I had to sum up Stellar Blade in a single word, I'd say it is derivative. As an example here, let's start out by giving an overview of the basic premise of the story. So, in Stellar Blade, you play as an android on a post-apocalyptic Earth that was devastated in an ancient war between what you're told was humanity and a race of alien invaders. Launching from a base in orbit of the planet, your mission is to fight and defeat the invaders on behalf of a humanity that, unbeknownst to you, no longer exists. Now, anyone who's played Platinum Games' 2017 release Nier Automata will right now be saying, hang on a minute, isn't that just the plot of Nier Automata? And yes, it is. The plot of Stellar Blade is strikingly similar to the plot of Nier Automata. The only difference is in the twist, really. In Nier, the twist is that the humanity you're fighting for is extinct, whereas in Stellar Blade, it's that the humanity you're fighting for actually turned into the monsters that you're fighting. So, it's not exactly the same, but it does give big can I copy your homework vibes. Being kind, we'll say it took very heavy inspiration.
Oh wow, I can't believe we both spoiled a video game that you're never gonna fucking play, and also another video game that is a classic that has been around for almost a decade. Shut the fuck up.
The story and world and many elements of the general design and gameplay and music especially are very derivative of Nier Automata, but Stellar Blade also borrowed from other places. The combat system takes inspiration from the likes of Sekiro and God of War. It's got the Souls-like enemy respawn mechanic. There are horror-styled sections that are trying to be like a Dead Space or a Resident Evil. There's a bit where you climb up a train car as it's falling off a cliff, which is literally just the first level of Uncharted 2. The last human city on this post-apocalyptic Earth is called Zion. Like in the Matrix, you might say, but no, this Zion is spelled with an X, so it's different. The people of Zion look up to an old, wise robot leader called Oracle. Kind of like the Oracle in the Matrix, you might say, but no, this is Oracle with no E, so it's different. The android residents of Zion are being stored in a bunch of pods to save power, so they're not generating power, they're in the pods to save power. So again, it's not exactly like the Matrix, but it is heavily reminiscent of the Matrix, yes. Now, there's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from other media, of course. Lots of great games wear their inspirations openly. But the problem with Stellar Blade is that it takes all of this stuff and smushes it together and then doesn't really do anything interesting with it. While a lot of the individual elements of Stellar Blade are fine by themselves, they don't ever really come together. The game feels more like a mix of various things the creators thought would be cool to put in a video game, rather than things that actually made sense to put in this video game. As an example, let's look at some enemy designs. So enemies in this game are called naytibas, which, if you know about the conflation of V's with B's in certain languages, including Korean, congratulations, you've spoiled yourself on the twist. Although it could be worse, in previews of the game, the naytibas were called natives. I know writers who use subtext, and they're all cowards. Anyway, the story with the naytibas is that humanity was in a war with an AI that wanted to replace them with androids, and in their desperation the humans turned to bioengineering to evolve humanity to the point where they could fight back. But these bioengineering experiments got out of control or something, and the humans lost their minds and turned into monsters. So that's the setup, but let's take a look at some of these enemy designs. Some of them look like big insects, some of them look like mutated statues, some of them look like squids, some of them look like robots. Some of them look like different sorts of robots with fleshy parts hanging out. Some of them look like giant beasts. Some of them look like organisms controlling a human host. Some of them look like zombies. Some of them look like fungal growths or spores or something. One boss looks like...
Look, it's not like a fucking game changer by any metric. It's just like a bubblegum ass game. A 5 out of 10 ass game. That's it. It looks nice. There's sexy ladies in it. And ultimately... it's the same old shit. Which leads me to believe that a lot of people simply did not like Horizon Zero Dawn, not because of its repetitive gameplay, but because the main character wasn't fuckable enough. Like, that's it. That's like the... this is a worse game than Horizon Zero Dawn, but with sexier characters. So gamers love this game, but hate Horizon Zero Dawn. So it must be, the fuckability metrics not actually hitting for a lot of these horn dogs, which once again blows my mind that people are not more embarrassed to openly state that. The fact that these people are not embarrassed to state that is crazy. Gene Park liked the game. Yeah, I mean, I'm saying it's a bubblegum game. Like, it's not a bad game. It's just not, moving the needle in a direction. That's the point. Gene also loved Horizon. I personally am not a big fan of like killing mechanic enemies, which is why I while I played the first Horizon game, I didn't actually play the second. Like Zero Dawn, I didn't really play. And it just wasn't like as compelling, and I feel like it's very repetitive. That's it.
Like this, another looks like this, another looks like this, and so on.
Or not. Oh, sorry, Zero Dawn. I finished. I loved Zero Dawn, even though it still had the same issues. I meant the second game. Which is what was it called? Forbidden West, yeah.
Theme to these enemies. They seem like a collection of designs inspired by other games and media. Bayonetta, Half-Life, Metal Gear Solid, Ghost in the Shell, Final Fantasy, and whatever else. Did you like, by the way, in Final Fantasy VII, when the final boss had a wing on only one side of his body? Because if you did, all of your Christmases have come at once, I'm happy to tell you. I think they ripped that design off about 6 times. And now, don't get me wrong, a lot of Stellar Blade's enemy designs are fine in isolation, but they're used absolutely thoughtlessly in the actual game, with either zero or very thin reasoning for what you're actually fighting to be designed the way it is, or located where it is. A lot of these designs were peppered throughout the world seemingly at random. Stellar Blade's music is another example of this. I quite like a lot of the game's soundtrack actually, but I disliked and sometimes couldn't stand the way in which it was used in the game. A lot of the music is fine, but whether or not any track actually matched the part of the game it was used in felt like it was random chance. For instance, the underground horror sequences with jump scares and scary monsters and so on have any tension whatsoever completely evaporated, because for some reason they sound like this. I confess I'm disappointed with a lot of mainstream game reviews that rank each aspect of a game with a numerical score, but never consider how the different elements of the game work together. Like, absurd example obviously, but Stardew Valley has a great soundtrack for a relaxing farming sim, but Stardew Valley's soundtrack would not be a good soundtrack for Alien Isolation to have, or vice versa, I suppose. Even though it would be the same music, it would be a bad soundtrack because of the context it was being used in. It's an obvious point, but you have to consider the whole package and not just each element by itself. The combat in Stellar Blade can be fun. All the parrying, evading, and executing Eve's flashy special moves can be pretty cool when everything comes together. There's the bones of a good combat.
You can tell he's woke because he's playing the most covered up version of this character. Sean didn't appreciate this game because there's titties in it. I'll say it. He should have been playing on hard difficulty, which is when the character is naked. You want this game to fail.
System here, but unfortunately the game has an issue with balance that more often than not undercuts the fun. The problem is the game has a very flat difficulty curve. Enemies at the beginning of the game are mechanically just as hard as enemies at the end, and there isn't really much difference between fighting any of the bosses in terms of skill either. The game increases the difficulty by simply turning up enemy HP and damage values, but this just has the effect of making the later game feel like a bit of a slog, as you spend a long time whacking away at enemies that are by this point trivial to beat mechanically, but can have what feel like arbitrarily enormous health pools. From Software's Sekiro is a good comparison here.
My fucking least favorite aspect of video games is bullet sponge, which reminds me of the second Horizon game, which is what people say always is like, hey, if you want to actually truly enjoy the combat in that game, you have to play it in hard difficulty. And when you turn it into hard difficulty, it doesn't improve the AI. It doesn't make the battles tougher. It just makes them bullet sponges.
The enemies at the start of Sekiro are both weaker and mechanically much simpler than the enemies at the end, but the game prevents things from ever turning into a slog by means of its death blow mechanic, which is genius. If you can fill an enemy's posture gauge in Sekiro by keeping up the pressure on them by parrying their attacks and hitting them with your own, you can drain their entire health bar in a single hit regardless of how much health they have left. And this goes for every enemy in the game, even bosses. If you prove you've mastered the mechanics of how to fight them enough to break their posture, you get to end the fight right there. I mentioned Sekiro's posture mechanic here because they put a superficially similar system in Stellar Blade. The posture bar is replaced with these little balance pips under the enemy health pool.
This is why Sekiro will forever remain one of the greatest games of all time. Also, I've reconsidered my stance against Sean. Clearly, he's playing the sexy bunny costume in this one. I'm afraid I judged him too early. It seems he is a man of taste, and it seems like he's not woke. And giving an honest assessment.
Hitting enemies with certain abilities or executing perfect parries will take away one of these pips, and once you deplete them all, you can execute a flashy special move similar to Sekiro's Death Blow, only here, instead of killing the enemy outright, it does a rather underwhelming amount of damage. I felt a little deflated every time I managed to pull one of these off against a boss. You go to all that effort.
I'm back into thinking that he's actually not, he's actually woke and not being fair in his assessment, considering the outfit of this character that he's utilizing. Once again, I'm back on the he's woke and he wants this game to fail train.
Focusing on parrying and whittling away their balance, and you're rewarded with a big flashy attack animation that ends up not really doing all that much. Feeling that my efforts to actually engage with the game's combat mechanics weren't really being appreciated, I ended up beating many bosses by mindlessly spamming Eve's special moves over and over, because why not? Eve has a fancy combat mode she can shift into, similar to God of War's Spartan Rage, where she gains access to a new moveset as well.
Yeah, he's back to critiquing in bad faith. He's so hard to pin down, which only leads me to believe that, lo and behold, he was always woke the entire time and was critiquing in bad faith. And the only reason why he peppered in a naked version was because he wanted to, draw you off the scent. Yeah. Look at that. Surprise. I was right all along when I first came into this conversation without playing the video game at all. I had already made up my mind. And it turns out I figured out another way to, confirm my previously held positions without changing them. What I just described to you right here is an analogy to exactly how these guys operate. Do you understand? Naked woman, I like. Very good. Clothed up women, I don't like. Seems like this guy is woke. Ultimately, though, I arrived at this conclusion without even playing the game, and I actually don't even care about playing the game at all. I would much rather enjoy the discourse surrounding the game. And I have already made up my mind about these woke libtards, including Sean. That's how people operate. That's just it. No one has any real interest in having a normal conversation. No one has any real interest in changing their minds, changing their previously held positions. It is very frustrating. Oh.
As well as growing a single wing on one side of her body, fancy that. The spin move she can do in this form has a knockback effect that prevents enemies from countering, so you can just press that over and over with no way for whatever you're fighting to ever do anything back to you. It feels like they made the more mechanically interesting and engaging elements of the combat give low gameplay rewards, whereas mindless repetitive spam is much more consistently rewarded. There are conflicting design influences here that work against each other. Stellar Blade feels like it's trying to be a little bit like Sekiro and a little bit like God of War and a little bit like Nier Automata and Bayonetta and Dead Space and so on, and all the different systems can end up getting in the way of each other. I will say though that when the Stellar Blade developers were looking at other game franchises for things to borrow, I wish that they'd also borrowed some character traits for their characters to have. The main character and the subject of all the fake outrage today is Eve, who is a blank slate with the emphasis on blank. Eve is exceptionally one-dimensional. Her only major motivation is to complete the mission she was assigned, and as far as I can tell, there aren't any interesting reasons for her to want to be doing that. She isn't trying to prove herself, she doesn't desire to be seen in a certain way, she isn't devoting herself to the mission to compensate for something else, she just has